Hello, dear friends. Welcome to our little corner of heartfelt conversations, a place where you can share your deepest feelings. Have you ever wondered how thin the line is between filial reverence and blind foolishness, between patience and spinelessness? I once thought that if you live from the heart, giving without expecting anything in return, you would surely earn respect. But I was wrong. Ashley was wrong. And here we are, at my husband's birthday celebration. At a party that I invested millions into organizing, my mother-in-law forced me to drink a strange beverage in front of all the guests. I dutifully agreed, but in a flash, I subtly swapped my glass for hers. And just 5 minutes later, she herself tore off her mask, exposing the entire family to shame and humiliation, for which my father-in-law forcefully evicted her from the house that very night. It was a weekend. Los Angeles, as usual, was buzzing with its vibrant life, but in our luxurious estate, in an exclusive suburban community just outside the city, a truly special festive atmosphere reigned. Today, my husband, David, was turning 35. I had spent an entire month preparing for this event. From compiling the guest list and selecting the menu at a 5-star venue to arranging live music and the tiniest decorative details, everything was on me. I wanted this day to be special, for my husband to be proud in front of his friends and business partners. I spared no expense, as my own company was thriving, and I believed that money could be earned again, while my husband's joy and reputation were more important. I wore an emerald green silk dress, with light makeup, and stood next to David, greeting guests. He looked especially elegant today in an expensive suit I had recently gifted him. He put his arm around my waist and whispered, "Thank you, my love. Having a wife like you is a once-in-a-lifetime blessing." My heart warmed. In 7 years of marriage, there had been fatigue and unnecessary arguments, but one tender word from him, and all my grievances instantly vanished. I thought my sacrifices, my patience in the face of my mother-in-law's sometimes unreasonable demands, had not been in vain. The guests had gathered, pleasant music played, cheerful laughter and conversations filled the garden. My father-in-law, Nathan Jenkins, a man who had worked as a civil servant all his life and was now retired, calm, and reserved, was enjoying conversations with old friends. But my mother-in-law, Gloria Jenkins, was entirely different. She wore a rich, wine-colored velvet gown. On her neck was the diamond set I had given her last year. She moved everywhere, shaking hands and exchanging greetings, boasting to everyone about her precious son's successes. She had always been like this, wanting to be the center of attention, wanting everyone to admire her family. I had long grown accustomed to it. The party was in full swing when Gloria approached David and me. In her hands, she held a silver tray with 2 glasses of a golden liquid, emitting a faint herbal aroma. She smiled that smile I jokingly called a smile to the ears but not to the eyes, and extended 1 glass to me. "Ashley, my dear daughter-in-law, come here." I dutifully approached. She spoke loudly, intentionally so that everyone around could hear. "My dear daughter-in-law, I see you've been working so hard lately. You've become quite pale. I specifically asked for this healing herbal tonic to be prepared for you. It contains only the most valuable ingredients. Drink it, you'll regain your strength, and it's high time you gave us a grandchild." The guests at the table hummed approvingly and began to joke. "Oh, what a caring mother-in-law. Anna is so lucky. Her mother-in-law looks after her like her own daughter." My cheeks flushed with embarrassment. The topic of children was very personal and painful for my husband and me. We had been trying for several years, but so far without success. I didn't expect my mother-in-law to bring this up for public discussion, but I couldn't refuse. It would be tantamount to a public insult. I smiled and reached out to take the glass. "Yes, thank you very much, Mom." But Gloria was in no hurry to hand it over. She held the glass, staring intently at me. Her voice remained sweet, but a strange, insistent pressure appeared in her gaze. "Drink, my dear. Drink it right now in front of me and everyone. Make me happy. It's from the bottom of my heart." My heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Her behavior was too strange. Why did I have to drink it immediately? Couldn't it be put off until later? I looked at David, seeking support, but he just smiled benignly and put his arm around my shoulders. "Oh, come on, sweetie, Mom means well. Drink it down, make her happy. It's a healthy tonic." My husband's words felt like a splash of cold water. He didn't notice anything strange, or he was in on it with her. At that moment, a warning from Sarah, David's younger sister, the only person in his family who treated me well, echoed in my mind. That morning, when I was at work, Sarah had urgently called me. "Ashley, be careful with Mom. At the party today, if she offers you anything to eat or drink, absolutely do not agree." I accidentally overheard her talking to Isabella. "It sounds like they're planning to put something in your food." Sarah's voice was full of panic. Isabella was the daughter of my mother-in-law's close friend and had been visiting us frequently lately. The way she looked at my husband was always flirtatious and meaningful. I vaguely suspected my mother-in-law's plans, but I never thought she would stoop to such vile methods. Back then, I still had doubts, thinking maybe Sarah had misheard something. But now, looking at that glass and my mother-in-law's insistence, I realized Sarah was not mistaken. A chill ran through me. What were they planning? To poison me? No, it probably wouldn't go that far. It was likely some substance that would make me lose control, start behaving inappropriately, so they would have an excuse to defame and humiliate me, to force a divorce. Cold sweat beaded on the back of my neck. What to do? I couldn't just throw the drink away. That would be an open declaration of war. I had no proof. Everyone would think I was just an ill-mannered daughter-in-law. Taking the glass and then discreetly pouring it out wouldn't work either. She was drilling me with her gaze, not looking away for a second. All eyes were on me. Everyone was waiting. Invisible pressure weighed on my shoulders. I could barely breathe. I looked at my mother-in-law. The smile on her face became increasingly forced, and impatience flickered in her eyes. I looked at my husband. He was still cheerfully chatting with friends, completely oblivious to my predicament. For a moment, I felt infinitely alone. And then a thought flashed in my mind. A daring, crazy thought. "All right, if you want a show, I'll play along." I took a deep breath and forced out the brightest smile I could muster. "Oh, Mom, since you insist so much, how can I refuse? I'll drink it now." I extended both hands and took the glass from Gloria. She sighed with relief. The smile on her lips became genuine. I slowly brought the glass to my lips, but the moment it almost touched them, I suddenly cried out. My hand trembled, and the drink nearly spilled. "Oh, excuse me, I dropped my earring." I hastily bent down, pretending to look for an earring under the table. Of course, there was no earring there. My sudden action drew everyone's attention. Gloria also leaned down to look. "It's nothing, dear. An earring is a small thing. You'll find it later." And at that very moment, in that brief instant, when no one was paying attention, I swiftly placed my glass on the tray, which Gloria was still holding, next to the other one, and took her glass. The two glasses of tonic were absolutely identical. No one could notice the swap. I straightened up, holding the other glass in my hand, and smiled sheepishly. "Found it. Sorry to interrupt the fun." Then I turned to Gloria and raised the glass. "Mom, it feels awkward to drink alone. Let's drink together to David's health in honor of his birthday. Consider it my treat." My suggestion was so logical and appropriate that it was impossible to refuse. My mother-in-law froze for a moment. Confusion flickered in her eyes, but in front of so many people, she couldn't say no. She had to reluctantly take the remaining glass. The very glass she had prepared for me. "All right, let's drink together," she said, and her smile became somewhat wooden. "1, 2, 3, the guests shouted, applauding. I looked directly into my mother-in-law's eyes, raised my glass, and drank it all down. Gloria, seeing this, was forced to squeeze her eyes shut and drain her glass. The sweet taste of the tonic filled my mouth, but in my soul, it was bitter. I placed the empty glass on the table, my heart pounding like a drum. A double-edged sword. The show was just beginning. I didn't know exactly what was in that glass, but I knew that in a few minutes, a real storm would break out. If you're also interested in what happens next, what shameful acts my mother-in-law will commit, and what the secret of that drink truly was, Don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button and the bell to not miss the continuation of this captivating story. Every subscription is a huge incentive for us to continue sharing engaging and meaningful stories with you. The feeling of waiting for a bomb to explode, whose fuse you yourself lit, is truly indescribable. My heart was still pounding wildly in my chest, but outwardly, I tried to maintain composure and even a cheerful demeanor. I returned to the table, sat next to my husband, and smiled as I responded to his friend's jokes. "Well, Ashley, after Mom's tonic, we're expecting good news. Work hard. Next year, we'll be celebrating a christening." I just smiled, and no one, probably, noticed how strained that smile was. I covertly glanced at my mother-in-law. Gloria, having drunk the glass, looked somewhat unnatural. She sat down in a chair and began to fan herself continuously, even though it was quite cool in the garden. From time to time, she cast an inquisitive, expectant glance at me. She was probably waiting for me to start showing strange symptoms, to start acting wild, talking nonsense, so she would have an excuse to intervene. But no, I sat there perfectly calm and sane. My self-possession, it seemed, was driving her mad. To understand why I could act so decisively and coldly, you probably need to know about my 7 years of marriage. It was a long journey of sacrifice and patience, on which I almost lost myself. 7 years ago, I, Ashley Miller, a girl who had just graduated with honors from the business management faculty, full of ambition, decided to postpone a brilliant career for marriage to David. At that time, he was an ordinary office worker from a not-so-well-off family, but I loved him. I loved him for his kindness, simplicity, and warm smile. On our wedding day, I promised myself that we would build a happy family together, that I would be a good wife and an obedient daughter-in-law. And I kept my word. Immediately after the wedding, my parents' business faced difficulties and was on the verge of bankruptcy. I, without hesitation, invested all my savings and even borrowed from friends to save the company. I immersed myself in work. Day and night, I negotiated with partners, sought new markets, and dealt with debts. During those 2 long years, David could hardly help me with anything. He had neither business acumen nor connections. He only encouraged me with empty words. All the financial burden, all the pressure, fell on my shoulders. And then heaven rewarded me. My company not only did not go bankrupt, but made an incredible leap forward. From a small fashion workshop, it transformed into a well-known clothing brand. I became the CEO. My monthly income was in the 6 figures. From that moment on, our life changed. I bought a luxurious estate in the suburbs, bought my husband an expensive car so that he wouldn't be worse off than his friends and colleagues. I also invited my husband's parents to live with us, thinking that a large, friendly family would be cozy, but this became the beginning of my silent suffering for years. Gloria Jenkins, my mother-in-law, entering the house built with my blood, sweat, and earned money, did not say a word of gratitude or praise. Instead, she began to establish her own rules. She said that I was a woman, and even if I was a CEO, at home, I should take care of the household. And so, every morning, even if the night before I worked until 2 or 3 a.m., I had to get up at 5 a.m. to go to the market and prepare breakfast for the entire large family. Lunch had to consist of 3 meat dishes and soup. Moreover, everything had to match everyone's tastes. My father-in-law liked fish soup. My mother-in-law only ate boiled vegetables. My husband preferred fried food, and his sister wanted something from European cuisine. I was like a chef in a restaurant, spinning in the kitchen to please everyone. But pleasing them seemed impossible. The soup is oversalted today. Why is the meat so tough? Ashley, do you even know how to cook? Such incompetence is simply a disaster. These reproaches sounded at every lunch, like invisible knives, wounding my pride. I looked at David, hoping for protection, but he just bowed his head low over his plate, pretending not to hear anything. After eating, I cleared the table and washed a mountain of dishes. My husband's younger sister, after dinner, would go to her room to watch movies or sit on her phone. My mother-in-law would sit in front of the TV and occasionally shout into the kitchen. "You missed some grease there." I tried. I endured. I told myself that I was the wife of the eldest son, that responsibility lay with me. I comforted myself with the thought that all mothers-in-law were like that, and my husband was kind, he just didn't want to offend his mother. That's how I deceived myself for many years. Not only the household, but all expenses in the house fell on me. Electricity bills, water, my sister-in-law's tuition fees, buying clothes and cosmetics for my mother-in-law. Everything was paid from my account. Gloria took it for granted. Moreover, she often demanded completely unreasonable things. Our neighbor, Mrs. Perkins, has such a beautiful handbag. They say it's designer. My skin has been so dry lately. Buy me that imported cosmetic set they advertise on TV. Each time, I silently fulfilled her requests, hoping only for peace in the house. But my silence and compliance only emboldened them. They saw me as a bottomless wallet and a free servant. They enjoyed a luxurious life at my expense, but never truly considered me part of the family. I remember once my company signed a large contract, and I received a substantial bonus. I joyfully ran home, boasted to my husband, and planned to use the money to take the whole family on vacation. But when I told them about it, my mother-in-law immediately interrupted me. What vacation? A waste of money. Sarah, your sister-in-law, is getting married. The groom's family demands a car as a wedding gift. Otherwise, there will be no wedding. You figure out how to solve this problem. I was stunned. Buying a car for my sister-in-law was not my obligation. But while I stood there in astonishment, David hastened to defend his mother. Oh, come on, Ashley. She's our only sister. We'll help however we can. It'll be our wedding gift to her. In the end, I had to grit my teeth and fork out several $100,000 for a car for my husband's sister to save his family's face. On the wedding day, I stood and looked at the sparkling car, decorated with flowers, and my heart was bitter. It was my money, my sweat and tears, but in everyone's eyes, it was an achievement, the wealth of my husband's family. No one mentioned my name, no one thanked me. I was invisible in the story of my own life. For 7 years, I was used to being a shadow, used to silent sacrifices, but everyone's patience has a limit, and that limit was crossed on that fateful night on David's birthday. In that glass of tonic was not only the evil potion my mother-in-law prepared, it contained all the humiliations and grievances I had accumulated for 7 long years. And when she drank it, she drank everything she herself had sown. I sat and smiled, but a storm raged inside me. This fake show had to end, and I would drop the curtain, but I never imagined that what was about to happen would surpass my wildest expectations. Time dragged on agonizingly slowly. Every second felt like an eternity. The celebration continued with toasts and empty congratulations. I tried to maintain the most unruffled expression, occasionally turning to my husband to talk to him, to put food on his plate, playing the role of a caring wife. But in reality, all my attention was focused on Gloria. Almost 5 minutes had passed since she drank the tonic, but nothing unusual seemed to be happening. She was still sitting, fanning herself and laughing with her elderly friends. A self-satisfied expression reappeared on her face. From time to time, she cast a meaningful glance at me, as if mocking my calmness, as if saying, "Just you wait, you'll be dancing for me soon." Anxiety stirred in my soul. Had Sarah been wrong? Or did the substance not act immediately? Or, what was even worse, did it not affect older people? 1,000 questions raced through my mind. If my plan failed, if nothing happened to her, I would become the laughingstock myself. I would look like an ill-mannered daughter-in-law who first offered her mother-in-law a drink and then made up some story. But then I noticed one small detail. Although she continued to smile and talk, the hand holding the fan trembled slightly. Beads of sweat appeared on her forehead, although the evening was quite cool. She started talking more and louder, and her stories became increasingly incoherent. One moment she was talking about a trip to Miami last week. The next she abruptly switched to fluctuations in gold prices. Her friends began to exchange puzzled glances. "Gloria, are you all right? You've gone a bit red," one of them asked. "Oh, what could happen to me? I'm as healthy as an ox." Gloria laughed loudly. Her laughter was coarse and vulgar, completely unlike her usual image of a reserved and aristocratic lady. Perhaps it's the joy that made me drink the tonic my daughter-in-law offered, and I feel the blood rushing through my veins. Saying this, she slapped her friend on the shoulder. She would never have allowed herself such a gesture before. I held my breath, watching. Yes, it had begun. This substance was most likely not poison or a sedative, but some kind of psychostimulant that deprives a person of control over their behavior and speech. A substance more terrible than poison, because it kills not the body, but a person's reputation. You see, in my 7 years of marriage, what tired me the most was not the household chores or financial difficulties, but the constant comparisons and reproaches from my mother-in-law. Gloria always saw me as a thorn in her side, simply because I was not the one she chose for her son. The woman she truly wanted as her daughter-in-law was Isabella, her best friend's niece. Isabella was pretty, knew how to deliver sweet, flattering speeches, which was the complete opposite of my straightforward and somewhat reserved nature. Immediately after our wedding, Gloria often invited Isabella over. She openly praised her in my presence. This is what a girl should be like Isabella, both beautiful and skilled. Lucky will be the man who marries her. Isabella recently finished floristry courses. She makes such exquisite bouquets. Not like some people, whose flowers in a vase look like a messy bunch. I listened and kept silent. I told myself not to pay attention, but those words were like invisible needles, pricking my self-esteem. With each passing day, she became more brazen. She began to create situations for David and Isabella to be alone. David, take Isabella to the airport. She needs to visit her grandmother in the countryside. David, Isabella's computer broke. Please take a look at it. David gladly agreed each time. He saw Isabella as a younger sister and completely failed to notice his mother's intentions. But I was different. I am a woman. I understood that the gaze Isabella cast upon my husband was not the gaze of a sister. It was a gaze of admiration and desire to possess. I once hinted to my husband about this, but he just brushed it off. You always imagine things. There's nothing between Isabella and me. Mom loves her, and we should treat her well. His carelessness simultaneously angered and saddened me. He didn't understand that by his carelessness, he was indulging his mother and putting me in an awkward position. My patience reached its limit about 6 months ago. One weekend, I returned from work and saw Isabella in the kitchen, enthusiastically helping my mother-in-law cook. Seeing me, Gloria didn't even greet me, just threw into the air. "Oh, you're back. After a whole day at work. And your face is like a funeral procession. Not like Isabella. At least she helps her mother in the kitchen." I was tired and didn't want to argue, planning to just go to my room. But as I passed by, I accidentally noticed a very beautiful white gold bracelet on Isabella's wrist. I froze, because it was the same bracelet my mother had given me as a wedding gift. I kept it in my jewelry box. "That bracelet," I stammered. Isabella flinched and hastily hid her hand behind her back. Gloria, seeing this, sharply said, "What about the bracelet? I saw you weren't wearing it. It was lying around unused. So I gave it to Isabella to wear." "Why are you so worked up?" "She took my item without asking and gave it to someone else, and now she says she gave it to wear." I could no longer hold back. "Mom, that's my mother's wedding gift. You had no right to take it without permission and give it to someone else," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Oh, what a tragedy. It's just some bracelet. I live in your house, use your money, and here you are making a fuss over some bracelet. Or are you stingy?" She began to play the victim. At that moment, David walked in. Seeing the tense atmosphere, he asked, "What happened?" Gloria immediately began to cry and complain that I had yelled at her over some bracelet. David, without figuring out who was right or wrong, turned to me and reproached, "To make such a fuss over one bracelet. Don't you see how upset Mom is? Apologize immediately." "Apologize? I didn't do anything wrong." "Why should I apologize? I'm not guilty." "I won't apologize," I said firmly. My words were like a spark. You dare to contradict me." David's eyes bulged. And at that moment, which I will never forget, he raised his hand and slapped me. The dry sound of the slap echoed through the kitchen. Everything around froze. I, stunned, pressed my hand to my burning cheek and looked at the man I called my husband. In 7 years, he had never once raised a hand to me. My mother-in-law and Isabella stood and watched me with triumphant, malicious glances. That night, I cried a lot. Not from the pain of the blow, but from the pain in my heart. I realized that in this house, I was absolutely alone. My husband, who should have been my support, was ready to hurt me for the sake of his mother. From that day on, I stopped crying. I understood one thing: tears won't help your grief. My patience only made them despise me even more. It was time for me to change. David's slap left not only a mark on my cheek, but an unhealing crack in my soul. It woke me from a 7-year dream of a harmonious family and a loving husband. I realized that my silence was not a virtue, but a weakness that nurtured the evil and selfishness of my husband's family. I stopped crying and complaining. I began to change, not through arguments or direct confrontation, but through quiet yet decisive actions. I started recording everything. In a small notebook I hid at the bottom of my closet, I documented every unreasonable expense my mother-in-law demanded, every biting remark she made. Every time David showed coldness and indifference, I didn't know why I was doing it. Perhaps just to remind myself never to forget the endured grievances. I also became more interested in the family's financial situation. Previously, I almost completely trusted David with this. I earned money, gave him a large sum each month for major expenses, and spent the rest on the family. I never asked what he spent that money on. I trusted him absolutely. But now the trust was gone. I secretly requested statements from my bank account and our joint account. And then I discovered the bitter truth. The large expenses David spoke of were mostly transferred to a brokerage account registered in his name and his mother's. They were using my money to enrich themselves. Moreover, there were smaller sums, several $1,000s each month, regularly transferred to a certain Isabella Stone. I didn't need to guess who it was. My husband was not just weak-willed. He was secretly taking money from his wife to support the girl his mother chose. Disgust overwhelmed me. My blood boiled, but I restrained myself. I knew now was not the time. I needed more evidence. Irrefutable evidence. I began to live a double life. To my husband's family, I was still the submissive and reserved daughter-in-law. After that slap, I spoke less, smiled less, and they decided I was scared, that I had accepted my place. But behind their backs, I was a different person, cold, calculating, collecting their lies bit by bit. My changes were probably noticed by only one person in the house: Sarah, my husband's younger sister. Sarah was very different from the other family members. She was straightforward, kind, and perhaps because she had studied abroad for a long time, she hadn't succumbed to her mother's calculating nature. She always treated me very well. Every time she came home, she brought me gifts, invited me to cafes and shopping. She was the only one in the house who affectionately called me sis, not her or that Ashley. One evening, as I sat alone in my study, reviewing the figures in the bank statements, Sarah came in with 2 cups of chamomile tea. "Sis, I think you've been a little sad lately. Did something happen?" Her gaze was full of concern. I looked at her. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything, but I held back. I didn't want to drag her into this mess. "Nothing, Sarah, just a lot of work." I forced a smile. Sarah looked at me. Her gaze was wiser than her 22 years. "Don't lie to me. I know Mom and David treat you badly. Please forgive them for me." Her words caught me off guard. And then she told me a story. Last week, when she unexpectedly came home, she accidentally overheard a conversation between her mother and Isabella. They were discussing how to get rid of me. Mom said that as soon as Isabella got pregnant with David's child, everything would be resolved. Then you'll want to leave yourself, unable to bear the shame. They said they needed to find a reason to humiliate me, so I would leave voluntarily, disgraced. Every word Sarah uttered was like a hammer blow to my head. So, they didn't just want me to leave with nothing. They wanted to destroy my reputation. Their conspiracy was too cruel, too vile. I felt my whole body tremble. Not from fear, but from rage. Seeing my state, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Ashley, I'm telling you this not to upset you, but so you'll be prepared. You can't endure this anymore. You have to protect yourself." Her words, like an electric shock, awakened the strong woman in me who had been sleeping for all these 7 years. Yes, I could no longer endure. I had to protect myself, my hard work, my honor. That night, I made an important decision. I called my old friend, a good and reliable lawyer. I told him my entire story, providing the first pieces of evidence I had gathered. He advised me to remain very calm, continue gathering evidence, and most importantly, not to let them know that I knew everything. Let them continue their show, and you be a smart spectator. The lawyer's words gave me clear direction, and now their hour had come, David's birthday. When I heard Gloria say she wanted to host a big party to celebrate her son entering a new stage of life and his career taking off, I knew this would be the stage she chose. I gladly agreed, and even generously stated that I would cover all expenses. My generosity surprised her and David, but they quickly rejoiced. They thought I was still the same fool who was easily deceived by sweet talk. They didn't know that I was preparing the stage for their downfall myself. I knew about their conspiracy, and I knew they would strike at this party. Sarah's warning that they would put something in my food or drink never left my mind. That's why, when Gloria brought the tonic with such strange insistence, I unhesitatingly carried out my plan to swap the glasses. I didn't know exactly what was in that glass, but I knew it was enough to make a person lose their mind and control. And that person was supposed to be me. But now, it was her. Back at the party, Gloria, after her vulgar laughter and conversations, began to behave even more strangely. She suddenly stood up, walked to the musicians who were playing, and snatched the microphone from the vocalist. "And now I'll sing for you," she declared with a slurred tongue. The entire room fell silent. People exchanged glances, not understanding what was happening. The sight of my mother-in-law, a woman who always considered herself an epitome of elegance and good manners, now standing on stage with a microphone in hand, swaying oddly to the music, was a real shock to everyone present. The pleasant music suddenly stopped. The young vocalist stood frozen, confused, not knowing what to do. The huge garden where the party was being held plunged into an awkward silence. All eyes, from curious and surprised to bewildered, were fixed on Gloria. My husband David turned white as a sheet. He hastily jumped up, intending to rush to the stage and lead his mother away. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Come down," he said in a panicked voice. But Gloria seemed to be out of her mind. She pushed her son away. "Get away. Don't stop me from performing. I haven't been in such a mood in a long time. Today is my son's birthday. I must sing him a congratulatory song." She said this and laughed hysterically. There wasn't a trace of grace in her laughter. My father-in-law, Nathan, sitting at the main table, darkened. He coughed, trying to signal his wife, but she completely ignored him. I sat at my table, my heart still pounding, but a feeling of malicious satisfaction rose within me. The show she had so carefully prepared for me, she was now performing herself with brilliance. I glanced at Isabella, her beloved niece. She too sat on pins and needles, her face flushed, then paled. She probably also didn't expect the show to go so off-script. "Hello, hello, 1, 2, 3. Gloria began to check the microphone. Her amplified voice echoed throughout the garden. Then she cleared her throat and announced, "And now I want to present to all the esteemed guests, and especially to my beloved son, the immortal work, New York, New York." A murmur ran through the room again. But this time it wasn't cheerful jokes, but whispers and gossip. "New York, New York. Why this song on her son's birthday? Very strange." But even stranger was her voice. She sang with soul, but completely missed the rhythm and the notes. Her voice soared, then plunged, then became slurred, like a drunk person, turning this lyrical, soulful song into a real disaster. People began to lose their composure and laugh. At first, there were quiet chuckles, but then they escalated into uncontrollable laughter. The solemn birthday celebration turned into a comedic show. I saw my husband's face turn crimson with shame. He dared not look at anyone, just buried his face in his hands. But Gloria, no. She seemed oblivious to the mockery. She continued to sway with her eyes closed, absorbed in her performance. After singing a verse, she suddenly stopped and pointed a finger at Mr. Davies, a prominent business partner, a man her age, elegant and wealthy. "Mr. Davies, do you remember me?" she asked loudly into the microphone. Mr. Davies, sitting with a glass of wine, flinched at the unexpected question and merely nodded, bewildered. I remember. Hello, Gloria. Gloria laughed coquettishly, in a way I had never seen before. Remember? Excellent. You used to chase after me, declare your love, wrote me so many letters. And I, fool that I was, married this Nathan, a simple teacher who never amounted to anything his whole life. Her words were like a bomb exploding. All laughter immediately died down. Everyone looked at my father-in-law, stunned. Nathan sat motionless. There was no color in his face. To be publicly humiliated by his wife in front of so many people, especially old friends, was a humiliation that could not be described in words. I saw his hands clench into fists. Blue veins bulged on the back of his hands. Mr. Davies's wife, sitting nearby, also darkened. She shot her husband a look, sharp as a razor. The atmosphere became extremely tense, but Gloria didn't stop. She continued to talk about her brilliant past, about how she had to sacrifice her youth and beauty for a husband who wasn't worth it. Her speech became increasingly incoherent. The most intimate family secrets, things usually carefully hidden, she now exposed for all to see. And you know, this estate, that car David drives, it's all with his wife's money. Our family was lucky we brought such a gold mine home. Otherwise, on Nathan's civil servant salary and David's modest salary, we would only be living on bread and water. This frank admission again shocked everyone. People shifted their gaze from me to David. In their eyes, there was no longer admiration, but sympathy for me and contempt for my husband, a man living off his wife. And so much so that his own mother admits it. What could be more humiliating? David couldn't bear it anymore. He jumped up and rushed to the stage, trying to snatch the microphone from his mother. "Mom, stop it! Shut up!" he cried desperately. But Gloria, having completely lost control, pushed her son away and even swung her hand and slapped him. "You're a good-for-nothing too. How dare you raise your voice at your mother? If you're so smart, go earn your own money, instead of begging from your wife." This slap and his mother's insulting words finally broke David. He froze on stage, his eyes red. He looked incredibly pathetic. I sat and watched all this. There wasn't a trace of sympathy in my soul. This was the price he had to pay for his weakness, for remaining silent and indulging his mother when she hurt me. I looked towards Isabella. She had discreetly left the party, realizing that she and Gloria had lost this round spectacularly. The show wasn't over yet. After scolding her son, Gloria again addressed the audience. She began to trash other daughters-in-law, even Sarah, her beloved younger daughter. It seemed that in her madness, she wanted to drag everyone down into this filth with her. I knew the climax of the show was near, that an even more shocking secret was about to come from her lips. The birthday celebration had now turned into a tragicomedy, with the mistress of the house playing the lead role. After humiliating her husband and insulting her son, Gloria continued her insane monologue. She began to blacken the name of every family member in turn, from the other daughter-in-law to the younger daughter, and even relatives present at the party. Intimate secrets, minor conflicts that were usually carefully concealed, were now mercilessly dragged into the light by her. And then there's Tanya, my second son's wife. She pointed to a couple. She thinks she's so smart, secretly taking money from her husband and investing it in real estate, hiding it from the whole family. She doesn't know I know everything. I just kept quiet until now. The husband and wife blanched. They exchanged frightened glances and hastily lowered their heads, not daring to look at anyone. The atmosphere at the party became increasingly oppressive. Everyone sat in silence, afraid of becoming the next target. I sat there, feeling like an outside observer watching a movie. I no longer felt malicious pleasure. I felt only a strange bitterness. The family, which outwardly seemed friendly and loving, was actually full of intrigue, deception, and distrust. Perhaps that tonic today was not the cause, but merely a catalyst, a spark that ignited a fire that had long smoldered in this family. And then, having smeared everyone around her with dirt, Gloria suddenly turned to me. She looked at me with a gaze full of hatred and triumph. "And you, Ashley," she screamed into the microphone. "Don't just sit there pretending to be an innocent lamb. Who do you think you are? You're just a walking ATM. Nothing more. Do you think because you bought us a house and a car, you can stick your nose up? Wrong. You're barren. You're a barren flower. You're not worthy of being a daughter-in-law in our family. Every word of hers was like a stab to the heart. Despite being prepared, hearing such cruel words from my mother-in-law in front of everyone was unbearably painful. The pain, accumulated for 7 years, rose again and squeezed my chest. But I did not cry. I just sat and looked her directly in the eyes. In my gaze, there was no longer submission. There was defiance. And then, in a fit of madness, she said what both Sarah and I had been waiting for. What would be the final blow, completely destroying her reputation? And you know, she laughed madly. My son David doesn't need such a barren woman. He already has another. Isabella, my niece, she's the one who deserves him. And she's carrying my David's child. Haha, we'll have an heir. These words struck like thunder, not only for me, but for everyone present. Everyone froze. The fact that a mother-in-law would seek another woman for her son because her daughter-in-law couldn't have children was already beyond the pale. But to announce it publicly with such pride was not just a family matter. It was a moral downfall. I looked at David. He stood on stage, trembling. His face was white as chalk. He looked at me with an imploring gaze. He probably wanted me to stand up and deny everything, to say that these were just the words of his mother, who had lost control. But I didn't. I just sat and looked at him with a cold stare. This was the consequence he had to bear. I turned to my father-in-law, Nathan. He sat motionless. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly that his knuckles were white. I saw in his eyes not only anger, but also disappointment and unbearable pain. To be humiliated by his wife, to learn that his son was cheating, and his family had become a laughingstock for everyone. What could be more painful for a man who had valued family values his entire life? The party was completely ruined. Guests quietly began to stand up and leave as quickly as possible. They no longer wanted to witness this shame. No one said goodbye. They simply left in silence, leaving behind emptiness and an eerie quiet. At that moment, I felt sorry for Gloria. With her own hands, she had destroyed everything: her reputation, her son's happiness, and the family she was so proud of. And all because of her egoism, despotism, and boundless greed. I knew my role in this play was coming to an end, but the curtain would not be lowered by me, but by the man who had been silent since the beginning of the party. I watched Nathan slowly rise. He didn't look at anyone, just silently walked to the stage where his wife still stood, mumbling something incoherent. Each of his steps was heavy, as if he carried the burden of a collapsing family on his shoulders. I knew that the anger of a good man is the most terrifying anger. If this story made you think, if you agree that no sacrifice should be in vain and evil should be punished, please share this video with friends and loved ones. Perhaps Ashley's story will serve as a warning to someone, help them realize their own worth, and give them the courage to break free from toxic relationships before it's too late. Nathan's silence was more terrifying than any scream. The entire vast garden seemed to hold its breath, watching his every step. He ascended the stage without the slightest hesitation. His figure, slightly thin, his back slightly stooped with age, at that moment exuded extraordinary dignity. He did not look at David, his son, frozen like a statue. He did not look at the remaining guests, who were curiously observing what was happening. His gaze was fixed on one single person, the woman with whom he had spent almost his entire life. Gloria, having blurted out her terrible secret, seemed exhausted. She sank to the floor of the stage. Her elaborate hairstyle was disheveled. Her luxurious velvet dress was crumpled. She looked incredibly pathetic. She raised her hazy gaze to her husband, seemingly not yet fully come to her senses. "Nathan, why did you come up here? Go away. Let me finish singing," she mumbled. Nathan said nothing. He simply walked over in silence and firmly, yet gently, took the microphone from her. Then he turned to the remaining guests, friends, partners, all those who had witnessed this shameful spectacle. He bowed, a very deep bow. "Esteemed guests," he began. His voice was low and hoarse, but every word was distinct. "I am Nathan, the head of this family. Today, A very unpleasant incident occurred in our home, which caused inconvenience and wasted your time. On behalf of my not entirely sane wife and my wayward son, I offer you all my deepest apologies." He bowed again. His actions stunned everyone. No one expected that a man so humiliated by his wife, who had lost all face, could behave with such dignity and responsibility. The whispers died down. Instead, respect appeared in people's eyes. "Our celebration today, unfortunately, is over," he continued. "Thank you for coming to share our joy, and once again, I apologize for everything." Having said this, he turned and looked not at Gloria, but directly into my eyes. For the first time in 7 years, I truly saw his gaze. There was no indifference or detachment in it, but remorse, regret, and even something akin to pleading. Then he turned to David. His voice became cold and steely. "What are you standing there for? Help your mother up, and both of you get out of my sight. Immediately." David flinched. "Dad, but Mom." "Did you not hear me?" Nathan growled. In his voice, there was an authority I had never noticed in him before. "I don't need a wife like this, and I don't need a son like you either. You are on your own now. Never cross the threshold of this house again." His words sounded like a verdict, sealing the fate of Gloria and David. David trembled. He looked at his father, then at me. His gaze was full of panic. In the end, he had to grit his teeth, walk over, and help his mother up. Gloria seemed to have regained some of her senses. She realized the trouble she had caused. "Nathan, what are you saying? Where are you sending me? This is my home." She tried to cling to him. "Your home?" Nathan chuckled bitterly. "And do you remember whose money bought it? Do you remember who worked tirelessly so you and your son could have all this? You've forgotten everything. In your eyes, there's only money and reputation. You destroyed this family yourself, so don't blame me for being cruel." He said nothing more, just waved his hand, ordering them to leave. David led his staggering mother off the stage. Gloria walked and cried, shouting curses, but no one paid her any attention anymore. As she passed my table, she stopped, and eyes flashing, hissed, Are you satisfied, you bitch?" I didn't answer, just looked at her with a calm gaze. "I am not satisfied. I merely believe you got what you deserved." When they disappeared from view, Nathan slowly descended from the stage. He walked towards me. All remaining eyes were on us. I didn't know what he was going to do, and I felt a little nervous. He stopped in front of me, looked at me for a long time, and then did something I never expected. He bowed deeply, solemnly, and sincerely. "Ashley, forgive me. I was wrong to remain silent for so long, to allow you to endure so many humiliations in this house. I am not worthy to be your father-in-law." Every word of his was like a drop of warm water on my parched heart. Tears streamed from my eyes again, but this time, they were not tears of humiliation, but tears of emotion and relief. "Dad, don't say that," I whispered. Nathan shook his head. "No, you deserve this apology. You are a good daughter-in-law, a good wife. It is we in our family who failed to appreciate you. From this day on, you no longer need to endure. Live your own life. If you wish, this house remains yours. And if not, I will respect that decision too." His words were like a liberation. They removed the invisible chains that had bound me for 7 long years. I knew that, from this moment, my life had truly turned a new page. My father-in-law's apology echoed in the silence of the deserted garden. They were not empty words. It was an acknowledgement I had craved for 7 long years. It was more valuable than any material wealth. I stood there, tears still streaming down my cheeks, but I felt incredibly lighthearted. All the grievances, all the humiliations, seemed to have left with those tears. The last guests, mostly Nathan's close friends, one by one came to say goodbye. They didn't say much, just patted him on the shoulder, shook his hand firmly. Their glances were full of sympathy and respect. They also looked at me, nodding and smiling a smile that no longer held pity, but respect for a woman who dared to stand up for herself. When everyone had left, only I, Nathan, and Sarah remained in the huge garden. My husband's younger sister had returned. Hearing the news, she ran up and hugged me tightly. "Ashley, I'm sorry. I couldn't do anything. She sobbed. I stroked her head. It's not your fault. You helped me a lot. Thank you. Nathan sank wearily into a chair. He rubbed his temples. In one night, he had aged 10 years. Sit down, children. I need to talk to you. He gestured for Sarah and me to take chairs. We sat opposite him. The atmosphere was still heavy. What happened with your mother and brother? He began in a low, sad voice, is my fault. I was too weak, too silent. I thought that if I avoided arguments, there would be peace in the family. But I was wrong. My silence enabled evil. It allowed your mother to become a despot, and David to become a puppet. He sighed, a sigh full of regret. I couldn't protect you, Ashley. I allowed you to endure too much. Dad, it's all in the past. I don't blame you, I said softly. No, I must take responsibility, he said firmly. Tomorrow, I will sign over the deed to this estate to your name. Sarah and I froze. Dad, I can't accept it, I hastily refused. This is your parents' home, the family's common property. I have no right. You have the right, Nathan interrupted me. Although the house is in my name, most of the money for its purchase came from you, earned through your hard work. I know everything. I put it in my name to please your mother, so she would feel like the mistress. But I was wrong. From the very beginning, it should have belonged to you. I am not giving it to you. I am returning what is rightfully yours. His words left me no room for objection. It turned out he wasn't oblivious. He knew everything. He had silently watched and appreciated all my sacrifices. As for you and David, he continued, looking at me with a guilty expression, I will not interfere. The decision is yours. Whether you forgive him or leave, I will respect and support your choice. You have suffered too much. You deserve happiness. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded through my tears. That night, I didn't go to our bedroom. I stayed in the guest room. I needed personal space, time to process everything that had happened. In the middle of the night, I heard a soft knock at the door. I opened it. It was David. He stood there, having lost his usual polish. His suit was crumpled, his tie loosened, his eyes red and swollen. He looked incredibly pathetic. Ashley, can I come in, talk to you? He asked in a hoarse voice. I hesitated, but then nodded and stepped aside, letting him in. He didn't sit, but just stood in the middle of the room, his head bowed, his hands nervously clasped. Forgive me, he began, his voice full of remorse. I know it's too late to say anything now, but I truly apologize. I was a terrible husband, a coward. I allowed my mother to hurt you. I even hit you. I don't deserve you. I listened in silence. I wanted to see what else he would say. I know you won't believe me, but I never stopped loving you. He raised his tear-filled eyes to me. The story with Isabella, it was a mistake. Mom orchestrated everything, and I just succumbed to weakness. I swear to you, nothing happened between us, and she's not pregnant. That's a lie Mom invented to make you divorce me. His confession didn't surprise me. I vaguely suspected it, but it didn't lessen my pain. The betrayal wasn't in how far they went, but in their very intention. Please, Ashley. He fell to his knees and clasped my legs. Give me a chance, one last chance to make everything right. I promise, I will change. I will protect you. I won't let anyone hurt you. Let's start over. He cried, tears of belated repentance. Looking at the man kneeling at my feet, the man I once loved with all my heart, I felt mixed emotions. Should I forgive him? Would he truly change? Or was this another act, another lie to keep me? I truly didn't know. David's pleas echoed in the quiet room, mixing with his choked sobs. He remained on his knees, clutching my legs. His face was wet with tears, like a naughty child awaiting judgment. I looked at the top of his head, at his hair, always neatly styled, now disheveled. Chaos reigned in my soul. One part of me wanted to soften. Regardless, this was the man I had loved, the husband with whom I had spent 7 years. Memories of the first days of our love, of tender gestures, of promises made, flooded my mind. Perhaps he was truly repentant. Perhaps I should give him a chance. Give our marriage a chance. But another part of me, cold and hardened after all the hurts, objected. A chance? How many chances have I already given him? 7 years. Every time his mother humiliated me. Every time I had to sacrifice my interests for the sake of his family. Wasn't that a chance for him to stand up for me? But he chose silence. And that slap he gave me, wasn't that the last chance he himself threw away? I gently but firmly freed my legs from his grasp. I stepped back, maintaining a safe distance. David, stand up. Tears and pleas won't solve the problem, I said in a surprisingly calm voice. He looked up at me. His red eyes were full of hope. So you forgive me? I shook my head. I didn't say I forgive you. I said we need to talk openly. I need time, David. I need time to think, to heal the wounds. What happened tonight and what has been happening all these 7 years, it's not something that can be easily forgotten in one day. I understand everything, he nodded hastily. However much time you need, I will wait. Just don't leave me. I can't promise anything, I said. My voice remained detached. Right now, I just want to be alone. Go back to your room. David seemed to want to add something, but seeing my resolute gaze, he retreated. He staggered to his feet, hastily wiped his tears, and silently left the room. The door closed. I collapsed onto the bed, feeling utterly drained. Sending away a person who is begging you is never easy, especially if that person was once your whole world. But I knew I had to do it. I couldn't show weakness now. If I forgave him easily, everything would go back to how it was. His weakness, his mother's despotism, it was in their blood, and it wouldn't change with a few tears of repentance. The next morning, I woke up with a clear decision. I could no longer stay in that house. Despite my father-in-law's word and David's remorse, the atmosphere there was too oppressive. It held too many painful memories. I needed to leave, at least for a while, to be in silence and truly listen to myself. I packed a few changes of clothes and necessities into a small suitcase. As I was about to leave, Nathan walked in. "Where are you going, Ashley?" he asked, with concern. "I'll stay at my mom's for a while." "I need to collect myself," I replied. Nathan sighed but didn't try to stop me. "Yes, you need to rest. Go, my dear. When you feel ready, come back. The doors of this house are always open for you." I said goodbye to him and Sarah and walked out the door with my suitcase. I didn't see David. Perhaps he had left for work early in the morning, or he was deliberately avoiding me. I called a taxi and went not to my mom's, but directly to an upscale apartment hotel in the city center, which I had booked in advance. I needed a completely unfamiliar place where no one knew me to begin the healing process. The following days, I lived a completely different life. I no longer had to wake up early to cook. I didn't have to listen to reproaches, didn't have to see fake faces. I dedicated all my time to myself. I went to the spa, practiced yoga, read books I had long put off. I walked alone through the streets, sat for hours in quiet coffee shops, simply observing passers-by and reflecting on my life. Sometimes David still texted and called. He no longer pleaded or cried, just asked how I was, talked about work, about life. He said that his mother, after that night, was in deep shock, sitting in her room all day and not talking to anyone. He said he was trying to change, learning to be a more responsible man. I read, I listened, but I didn't reply. I knew that words were easy, but only actions could be trusted. A week later, my lawyer, Miss Davies, called me. "Ashley, Mr. Jenkins has completed the process of re-registering the estate in your name. The documents have been sent to your address. Holding the new deed of ownership, issued in my name, I felt no joy. It was merely confirmation of the family's disintegration. I put it in the safe, along with the notebook where I had recorded my grievances. I knew this would be a new beginning, but the path ahead was still full of difficulties. Could I truly forgive? Could David truly change, and should I give our marriage another chance? I truly had no answer. Dear friends, faced with her husband's belated repentance and the collapse of his family, our heroine, Ashley, stands before a difficult choice: to forgive and start over, or to resolutely leave in search of new happiness. What would you do in her place? Leave your comments to share your thoughts. Every opinion of yours is not only sympathy for the heroine, but also, perhaps, valuable advice for those who find themselves at a crossroads in life. The days spent alone in the apartment hotel were a time when I could truly look at myself from an outsider's perspective, independent of anyone's opinion. I realized that for all these 7 years, I had lived too much for others. I tried to be the ideal wife, the obedient daughter-in-law in the eyes of my husband's family, to such an extent that I forgot what I wanted and what I needed myself. I had lost my smile, my hobbies, even the self-confidence inherent in a successful woman. Now, having broken free from this invisible cage, I slowly began to rediscover myself. I returned to work at my company. Initially, I planned to work remotely, but the rhythm of work, new projects, and strategic meetings captivated me. I realized that only by doing what I loved, by asserting my worth, did I truly feel alive. The company's employees, learning from rumors what had happened, not only did not turn away from me, but treated me with special respect and sympathy. They saw in me not a boss who had gone through a family scandal, but a strong woman who dared to fight for the truth. This silent support gave me a lot of strength. However, my peace did not last long. One evening, as I was about to leave the office, I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Ashley?" A young, slightly timid female voice was on the other end of the line. "Yes, I'm listening. Who is this?" It's Isabella." My heart clenched. Isabella. The name I tried not to think about. Why was she calling me? "What do you want?" I asked. My voice turned cold. I can meet you. I need to tell you something very important. Please, just for a couple of minutes." Her voice was full of despair and pleading. I was about to refuse. I didn't want to see her again, didn't want to hear anything related to that family, but something in her voice made me stop. It wasn't the voice of a victor or arrogance. It was fear. "All right, where and when?" I replied. We met at a small, not too crowded cafe. Isabella looked completely different from how I was used to seeing her, flirtatious and confident. She wore a simple dress, her face was without makeup, her eyes swollen and red. Seeing me, she lowered her head, not daring to look directly. "Forgive me." That was the first thing she said in a trembling voice. "I know it's too late now, but I truly apologize. I was wrong." I said nothing, just silently looked at her, waiting for her to continue. Everything was orchestrated by Gloria," she began. "She came to me, said that you and David were unhappy, that sooner or later you would divorce anyway. She promised that if I helped her, she would arrange everything for me, make David marry me." "So the pregnancy story was also a lie?" I interrupted. Isabella nodded. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. "Yes, a lie. She made it up. She said that with such a pretext, you would have no choice but to leave yourself. She even gave me some kind of medicine, told me to find a way to slip it into David's food so he would lose control, so everything would become true. But I didn't do it. I swear, I didn't dare to commit such a sin." Her words stunned me. I knew my mother-in-law was cruel and cunning, but I didn't think she was capable of such a terrible and vile conspiracy. She wanted to destroy not only my reputation, but also her own son, just to achieve her goal. "So why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm scared," Isabella said in a panicked voice. "After that night, Gloria called me, screaming, threatening. She said that I ruined everything. She said she wouldn't leave me alone. I'm very scared. She won't stop at anything. I just wanted to tell you the whole truth, hoping that you can protect me." She burst into tears, looking incredibly pathetic. I sat and looked at the girl in front of me. Mixed feelings raged in my soul. Should I believe her? Or was this another act, another conspiracy orchestrated by my mother-in-law? But looking at Isabella's fear-filled eyes, at her genuine panic, I felt that perhaps this time she was telling the truth. A person can act, but such animal fear cannot be faked. I sighed. My hatred for her subsided a little. In the end, she was just a pawn in my mother-in-law's hands, a victim of greed and selfishness. "All right, don't cry," I said in a softer voice. "Do you have any proof of what you just said? Messages, audio recordings, anything?" Isabella hastily nodded. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and showed me a text message exchange with Gloria. There were promises, prodding, and threats. After the plan failed, everything was clear and irrefutable. I silently took photos of everything with my phone. "Thank you," I said. "This is very important. Be careful. Find a safe place so she can't find you." "Yes, I understand you. You're not angry with me anymore?" Isabella looked at me with hope-filled eyes. I didn't know what to answer. Angry? Yes. But hateful? No. I feel only endless fatigue and disappointment. "Go," I said. As for our relationship, let time tell. The meeting with Isabella left me with a complex aftertaste. The truth about my mother-in-law's conspiracy turned out to be even more cruel and repulsive than I could have imagined. She didn't just want to kick me out of the house. She was ready to use the dirtiest methods, even sacrifice her own son's happiness and honor, just to satisfy her egoism and thirst for power. I returned to my apartment with a heavy heart. I sat alone in the darkness, and the messages from Gloria to Isabella kept replaying in my mind. "As soon as you get pregnant, leave the rest to me. Don't be a wimp, girl. What man can resist temptation? Act bolder, I'll cover for you. Because of you, you fool, everything fell apart. Watch it. Don't you dare say a word to anyone, or you'll regret it." Every word breathed malice and calculation, which was chilling. I always thought that no matter how much she hated me, how much she despised me, she at least loved her son. But no, I was wrong. In her eyes, David was just a tool, a pawn for executing her plans. She didn't care about his happiness. She only cared about getting an obedient, manageable daughter-in-law, an heir to continue the lineage, and most importantly, control over all the wealth I had earned. A feeling of disgust rose in my throat. I couldn't believe I had lived under the same roof, called such a person, mother, for 7 whole years. I picked up my phone, intending to immediately send this evidence to David. I wanted him to see his mother's true face, the one he had always idolized and blindly obeyed. I wanted him to hurt, to repent, but I stopped. What would it achieve if I sent it to him now? Would he believe me, or would he again decide that I was trying to cause trouble between them? With his weak-willed character, he would most likely again choose to believe his mother. Or, even worse, he would beg me to remain silent for the sake of family peace. No, I would not do such a useless thing. This evidence was not for David. It was my weapon, my main weapon, which I would use at the most decisive moment. I called my lawyer, told him the whole story, and sent him the new evidence. He, having reviewed them, also could not hide his surprise. My God, Ashley, this is no longer just a family conflict. Gloria's actions show signs of incitement to illegal acts and defamation. We can definitely sue her. "I know," I replied calmly, "but not now. Let them lie low for a while. I want to see what else they are capable of." In the following days, I returned to my life, trying not to let these events affect my work and mood. I still went to the office every day, managed projects, appeared as a strong and decisive director. Only Sarah and my lawyer knew about the storm raging in my soul. A week later, one morning, when I had a meeting with partners, my phone vibrated continuously. It was Sarah's number. My intuition told me something bad had happened. I hastily excused myself and went out to answer. "Ashley, come to the hospital immediately." Sarah's voice on the other end of the line was panicked. Mom, she lost consciousness. They took her to the emergency room." My heart skipped a beat. Despite all the hatred for what she had done, hearing that something bad had happened to her, I couldn't help but worry. How did she lose consciousness? What happened? I don't know exactly myself. Dad said that some strange people came to our house this morning, introduced themselves as collectors. They caused a scandal, said that David took a large sum from them for business, but it failed, and now he can't pay it back. Mom, hearing this, couldn't withstand the shock and fainted. Debt? David borrowed from thugs? What's going on? Where's David? Why did he let them come home and cause a scandal? I asked. I don't know where he is. I've been calling him all morning, but he's not answering. Come to the hospital, Dad and I are here, Sarah said and hastily hung up. I stood rooted to the spot in the middle of the corridor. Everything was muddled in my head. One problem after another. Troubles were piling up. What other terrible secrets was my husband hiding from me? I hastily canceled my meeting, rushed out of the office, and caught a taxi to the hospital. In the emergency room, Gloria lay on the bed. Her face was pale. An IV was in her arm. Nathan and Sarah stood nearby, their faces anxious. Seeing me, Nathan sighed. "Ashley, you came. Dad, how's Mom? What are the doctors saying?" I asked. "The doctors say she had a severe psychological shock, which caused a sharp spike in blood pressure. Fortunately, they got to her in time, but she'll need to stay under observation," Nathan said warily. "And what about this debt, Dad?" "David, I don't know anything myself." Nathan shook his head. "He never said anything about his business. I'm also trying to reach him, but without success. That scoundrel caused trouble and disappeared." At that moment, a doctor came out of the emergency room. "Relatives of the patient?" "Yes, that's us," Nathan hastily replied. The doctor looked at us with a serious expression. "The patient is temporarily out of danger, but her condition is still very weak. The most important thing is her emotional state. We found signs of severe depression. The family needs to be very careful, avoid any new shocks." Severe depression. We all froze. It turned out that behind the mask of a despotic, caustic woman was simply a woman with her own pains and problems. Perhaps all the intrigues she had woven were partly caused by this psychological illness. I looked at the woman lying motionless on the bed, and a strange feeling rose in my soul. Hatred seemed to have subsided, and in its place came something akin to sympathy. News of my mother-in-law's hospitalization and David's disappearance, along with the enormous debt, quickly spread through the family. Gloria's depression became a ticking time bomb that uncovered all the hidden wounds and invisible tensions she had been experiencing. None of us, not even Nathan, had ever noticed it. All of my husband's family, his other sons and daughters-in-law, hearing the news, also rushed to the hospital. But they came not out of concern for their mother's health, but out of fear. They were afraid that David's debt would affect them, afraid that their family, always seemingly wealthy and respectable, would collapse. They crowded around the bed. Some lamented, some reproached. "My God, how could David be such a fool? What do we do now if these collectors come to our house? How will we look our neighbors in the eye?" No one asked how Gloria was feeling. They cared only about themselves, their reputation. I stood in the corner of the room, silently observing. This scene seemed absurd to me. A family in which there was not a drop of real love. Nathan, after the initial shock, regained the composure of the head of the family. He cut short the useless lamentations. "Everyone be silent," he growled. "This is no time for complaints. Your mother is lying here. The most important thing now is to find David and figure out what really happened. And the debt, if it's real, we'll solve it together. We cannot let ourselves be laughed at." His words silenced everyone, but I knew it was only a temporary calm. Solve it together? Who will solve it? I knew that in the end, this burden would again fall on my shoulders, because in this entire family, only I had sufficient financial means. I said nothing, just quietly left, leaving them space for a family council. I knew I no longer belonged in that place. I went out into the corridor, found an empty bench, and sat down. I took out my phone, intending to call my lawyer and ask what to do in this situation, but then I changed my mind. I wanted to see how long my perfect husband would avoid responsibility. 2 days passed. David still didn't appear. His phone was off. No one could contact him. The collectors called and sent threats every day, not only to Nathan, but to all the brothers. The atmosphere in the family became extremely tense and panicked. Gloria, having come to her senses and learned what her son had done, again fell into despair. She said nothing, just lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She looked very pathetic. Despite how badly she had treated me, seeing her like that, I couldn't help but feel sympathy. That evening, as I was preparing dinner in my apartment kitchen, the doorbell rang. I looked at the intercom screen. It was David. He looked even worse than at our last meeting. Unshaven, in crumpled clothes, with deeply sunken eyes, full of fatigue and despair. I hesitated, not knowing whether to open the door, but then decided to meet him face to face. For the last time, I opened the door. He looked at me with red eyes. "Ashley, He wanted to say something, but stopped. "Come in," I said calmly. He silently entered and collapsed onto the couch, burying his head in his hands. I didn't ask anything, just silently sat opposite him and waited. After a long time, he raised his head. "I lost, Ashley. I lost everything," he said in a hoarse voice, and he began to tell his story. He said that he had invested all his savings and even borrowed money from loan sharks to invest in a real estate project that a friend had recommended to him. He hoped that the project would be successful, that he would earn a lot of money and could proudly stand by me, no longer living off me. But the project failed. His friend ran off with the money. He lost everything, left with huge debts. He didn't dare to go home, didn't dare to look his family in the eye, didn't dare to look me in the eye. He had been hiding all these days, living in fear and despair. "I know I have no right to look you in the eye," he said. Tears streamed down his emaciated face. "I deceived you. I hurt you. I don't deserve forgiveness. I came today not to beg you to come back. I just wanted to give you this." He pulled signed papers from his jacket pocket with trembling hands. "This is a divorce petition. I agree to all your terms. The estate, the property, it's all yours. I don't need anything. I ask you only one thing. Take care of my parents. They are old. They are not to blame." I looked at the divorce petition on the table, then at the man in front of me. For a moment, I almost softened, but then I remembered everything he and his family had done to me. Was this belated apology, this remorse, genuine? Or was it another act, a final scene to evoke my pity? The divorce petition lay on the glass table. The lines and David's signature seemed to sear into my brain. I had been waiting for this day, preparing for it. But when it arrived, I didn't feel the relief I had anticipated. I looked at David, sitting opposite me. There was no longer any calculation or pretense on his face, only the weariness and emptiness of a defeated man. "Take care of your parents?" I repeated his words with a bitter smirk. Why should I do that? Did they ever consider me a daughter, or did they just see me as a tool, a gold mine to be exploited? David lowered his head, unable to object. I know. They were wrong," he whispered. "But they are also victims of their greed and pride. Mom, she's very ill, and Dad is old now. I don't have the courage to go home. I can only hope for you." "Hope for me?" I laughed, a laugh full of bitterness and anger. "You're funny, David. When you had everything, how did you and your family treat me? You humiliated me, conspired to harm me, to take everything from me. And now, when you've lost everything, when your family is on the verge of collapse, you come here, talk about morality, and ask for pity. Who do you take me for? A saint or a fool, without self-respect?" Every word of mine was like a stab to his heart. He sat motionless, his face pale. He couldn't utter a word. "I will not help you, and I will not help your family," I said firmly, in an icy voice. "This is the price you must pay for what you've done. You say, you have debts. Those are your problems. You say, your mother is ill. She has other children to care for. I no longer have any obligations to you. I understand," David mumbled. He stood up, swaying as if drunk. Then sign it, free us both." He pointed to the divorce petition. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble, but the moment I was about to sign, I stopped. A thought flashed in my head. No, I can't just end everything so easily. If I sign, I will be free. And they will only pay with money, with reputation. But the emotional wounds, the pain they inflicted on me, nothing can compensate for that. I wanted them to feel, to understand what it's like to be manipulated, to be cornered just as they had done to me. I put the pen down. "I won't sign," I said. David froze. "Why? You wanted a divorce." "Yes, I want a divorce," I replied. "But not now, and not like this." I looked him straight in the eyes, with a gaze he had never seen in me. A cold, sharp, authoritative gaze. "From this moment on, everything will be by my rules. You want a divorce? Good, but first you will do something for me." "What?" David asked with distrust. "Go home and tell your parents, tell your entire family, that I have agreed to help you solve the debt problem," I said with a mysterious smile. David was completely confused. You're serious? You agree to help? Yes, I nodded, but with one condition. All members of your family, from your parents to your brothers and sisters, must come to me. They must personally come here, bow to me, apologize, and ask for help. If they do that, I'll think about it. And if not, then forget about that petition. I will never sign it, and you will forever remain my husband on paper. You will forever bear the stigma of a bankrupt, debt-ridden couple with me. Let's see if you can start fresh then. My words were like a splash of cold water for David. He looked at me. His gaze was full of surprise and fear. He understood that the naive lamb I had been had transformed into a wolf. He was no longer in charge. Now, the decision was entirely in my hands. He had no choice but to comply. Okay. I'll talk to them, he stammered and hastily turned to leave, as if fleeing from my new self. The door closed, and I was left alone in the huge room. I didn't know if I had done the right thing, but I knew I couldn't let them off so easily. I wanted them to pay for their pride. I wanted them to bow to the one they had once despised and humiliated. My show was not over yet. It had only moved to a new act, an act in which I would be the director. The play I staged worked faster than I expected. Just 2 days later, in the afternoon, the doorbell of my apartment rang. On the intercom screen, I saw a scene I would probably never forget for the rest of my life. My husband's entire family, in full force, stood at my door. Nathan, Gloria, the 2 other sons with their wives, the younger daughter, and David himself, they stood there, having lost their usual haughtiness and arrogance. Their faces showed embarrassment, shame, and even fear. I made them wait for quite a long time, so they would feel what it's like to wait in hopelessness. Then I slowly opened the door. "Did you want something?" I asked with indifference, though a storm raged inside me. Nathan was the first to speak. He stepped forward and bowed. "Ashley, we have come to ask for your forgiveness." Then one by one, from Gloria, who once saw me as an enemy, to the brothers and their wives, who once echoed her words, everyone bowed and uttered words of apology. Words that were difficult for them to say. That sounded awkward, but they were sincere apologies because they knew that now I was their only hope. I said nothing, just stood silently and looked at them. I wanted them to remember this moment, the moment they had to humiliate themselves before the one they considered beneath them. Finally, I spoke. "All right, come in." I turned and went inside. They silently followed me, like a group of criminals awaiting judgment. I invited them to sit on the couch, and I sat in an armchair opposite them, taking the position of the hostess, the one who decides. You promised to help our family." David broke the silence first. His voice was full of hope. "Yes, I promised," I replied. "And I will keep my word. I will pay off your debt." A sigh of relief swept through the room, but I raised my hand, indicating that it was too early to rejoice. My voice grew firmer. "My help is not free. I have my conditions." "What conditions, dear? Speak," Nathan said hastily. "Just help us get through this. We agree to anything." "Excellent." I smiled a cold smile. "My conditions are very simple. First, the estate remains mine. It is my property, and it is not negotiable. Second, all our other joint property, including cars, shares, and savings, I will use to pay off his debt. After repayment, if anything remains, I will not take a single penny. We will consider this compensation for my emotional damages. Third, and most importantly," I paused and looked each of them in the eye. "After everything is settled, David and I will divorce, and from that moment on, there will be no relationship between me and your family. You have no right to bother me. We will consider that we never knew each other." My conditions were like hammer blows to their heads. They froze. They thought I would demand money, that I would divide property. But no, I wanted a complete break. It was more painful than losing money. It was humiliation, a complete denial of their existence. "Ashley, David began. But I interrupted him. "These are my conditions. Yes or no. If you agree, tomorrow I will transfer the money. If not, then please leave. And I will sign the divorce petition immediately, and you deal with the debt yourselves." I put them in an impossible position. On one side, my freedom and their collapse. On the other, temporary dependence and financial salvation. They exchanged glances. Their eyes were full of agonizing doubt. Finally, Nathan made the decision. "All right, we agree," he said bitterly. The next day, I kept my word. I used part of our joint property to fully pay off David's debt. Everything was settled. Their family avoided bankruptcy, but they lost something more valuable: their pride. As agreed, a month later, David and I officially divorced. That day, only the two of us were in court. No family, no friends. The procedure was quick and quiet. Holding the divorce certificate in my hands, I felt neither joy nor sorrow, only a strange peace. I was truly free. Stepping out of the courthouse, David was waiting for me at the entrance. "Thank you," he said hoarsely. "And I'm sorry." I didn't reply, just nodded and walked away. I didn't look back. The past was behind me. A new life awaited me. Dear friends, thus, after a long and thorny path, the story of our heroine, Ashley, came to a somewhat unexpected conclusion. She chose not loud revenge, but a more subtle approach, forcing those who had wronged her to experience humiliation themselves and pay for their mistakes. This story taught us many valuable lessons about self-worth, the power of independence, and forgiveness. If this story touched your hearts, do not hesitate to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so that we can continue to share meaningful and profound stories with you. Your support is our greatest motivation to spread good in this world. My life after the divorce was surprisingly calm. There were no more fake social events, biting reproaches, pressure, or the need to please anyone. I devoted most of my time to myself and reorganizing my business. I sold the estate, with which too many bad memories were associated. I bought a smaller, cozier penthouse with a rooftop garden full of sun and wind. This was my real home. I also decided not to directly manage my old company anymore. I handed over the management to a team of trusted professionals while I remained in an advisory role. I wanted a lighter, freer life. I began to travel to places I had long dreamed of, but hadn't had the opportunity to visit. I learned new skills, took piano lessons, painted, and arranged bouquets. I rediscovered joy in the simplest things. Sometimes, news about David's family reached me through mutual acquaintances. After I paid off their debt, they didn't go bankrupt. But the price they had to pay was higher. They lost all reputation in business circles. No one wanted to deal with a family with so many scandals anymore. Their businesses declined. David, after the divorce, tried to start over, but the shadow of the past was too great. He couldn't find a good job, and no woman wanted to be with him. He lived a secluded, lonely life. His mother, Gloria, after the severe shock, weakened with each passing day. She stopped being caustic and despotic, becoming silent and withdrawn. Perhaps, at the end of her life, she realized her mistakes. I listened to these news without any emotion. All grievances ended the day I walked out of the courthouse. Whether they lived well or not, it was no longer my concern. One evening, as I was sitting in my rooftop garden, reading a book, the phone rang. It was Sarah. "Ashley, are you free? Can I drop by?" Her voice was as cheerful as ever. "Of course, come over," I smiled. Some time later, Sarah arrived. She brought a basket of fruit and a radiant smile. She had grown up and become even more beautiful. "Sis, you look 10 years younger," she joked. "Just call me Ashley. I'm no longer your sister-in-law," I laughed. We sat, drank tea, and chatted about nothing. Sarah said that after everything that happened, she decided to live separately. She couldn't stay in such an oppressive and calculating family anymore. She started building her own career and had already achieved her first successes. "I learned a lot from you," she said with sincerity in her eyes. "You taught me that a woman should always love and value herself, and I am grateful to you," I replied. "If it weren't for your warning that day, perhaps I wouldn't have what I have today." We looked at each other and smiled. There were no longer any daughter-in-law and sister-in-law relations between us, but a true friendship, a sisterly bond. Before leaving, Sarah handed me an invitation. "I have my engagement next week. I really want you to come." "Of course. I'll come." I took the invitation. "I'll definitely be there," Watching Sarah disappear behind the door, I felt warmth in my soul. It turned out that in the end, I not only found myself, but also gained a good sister. Life is sometimes surprising. It takes one thing but gives something more valuable. I returned to my book. A light evening breeze brought the scent of jasmine. I closed my eyes, enjoying this precious tranquility. The past was a lesson, the present a gift, and the future, I knew, would be a hopeful journey. A journey I would write myself, independent of anyone. I was truly reborn. Dear friends, here we come to the end of a long story. A story that may have caused you sighs, indignation, and tears of sympathy. Ashley's journey from an obedient and patient wife and daughter-in-law to a strong woman, mistress of her own destiny, is not just an entertaining narrative. For me, it is a profound reflection of life, of those dark corners of family relationships into which we, for the sake of the word sacrifice, sometimes allow ourselves to be driven. The biggest and most painful lesson this story teaches is perhaps about the boundaries of kindness and silence. Ashley lived in silent self-sacrifice for 7 years. She believed that if she gave enough, if she yielded for the sake of peace in the family, her sincerity would one day be appreciated. This is a very common mindset, especially among women in our culture, who are taught from childhood to be self-sacrificing and that a bad peace is better than a good quarrel. But Ashley's story shows us that boundless patience is the most fertile ground for the egoism and greed of others. When your giving is taken for granted, when your silence is considered a weakness, your kindness proves inappropriate. It ceases to be a virtue and becomes a tool for exploitation and humiliation. Never allow anyone, not even your closest ones, to turn your kindness into an obligation that does not need to be reciprocated with respect. Another profound lesson is the importance of listening to your intuition and noticing warning signs. Ashley's marriage did not collapse in one day. Cracks appeared in it long ago, from her mother-in-law's unreasonable reproaches, from her husband taking his mother's side instead of defending his wife, from inexplicable financial flows. But out of love, faith, and the desire to preserve the family, Ashley chose not to notice. She excused them, deceived herself that everything would work out. Life always sends us signs, quiet warnings. It could be a disrespectful word, a heartless act, or an inexplicable feeling of anxiety. Never disregard these. Learn to trust your intuition, because it is the deepest voice protecting you from pain. Independence, especially financial, is the most reliable armor for a woman. Ashley was able to stand firm and fight back so strongly, largely because she had her own career, her own economic independence. Imagine if she had been just a homemaker, completely dependent on her husband. Would she have had the courage to swap glasses, hire a lawyer, and start a new life? Most likely, no. Giving in a marriage is necessary, but losing your independence is a fatal mistake. Whoever you are, however much you love your husband and children, never quit your job. Don't give up the opportunity to earn money and decide your own fate. Because when the storm hits, that will be the only lifeline you can count on. And perhaps the most humane lesson we can all draw is about the power of change and the ability to revive. Being cornered, Ashley did not break down or seek blind revenge. She turned pain into strength and anger into a carefully planned strategy. She not only achieved justice for herself, but also forced the culprits to face the consequences of their actions. What you sow, so shall you reap. This is not malicious pleasure from vengeance, but the inevitable working of the law of karma. What is even more valuable is that after her victory, Ashley did not dwell on the past. She chose to move on, to find herself, to live a more meaningful life. This shows us that no matter what deep wounds you have endured, however dark the past was, you always have a choice to choose a brighter future. Collapse is sometimes not the end, but an opportunity to rebuild everything even stronger and more reliably. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to start over, because after every rain comes the sun, and after every fall, we become stronger. Finally, the story we have experienced together was created for educational purposes, to spread positive ideas and valuable lessons from the experience of family life. It is a reminder that each of us, especially women, should always love and value ourselves. Patience is necessary, But self-respect is more important. Be a kind wife, but also a woman with character. Know your boundaries and when to speak up. Your life is in your hands. Do not give that right to anyone else. As the author of this story, I honestly lived through all the emotions with the heroine as I wrote each line. This story is not just a figment of imagination, but the quintessence of many confessions, many fates that I have had occasion to hear and see in life. Personally, I believe that Ashley's obedience in the initial stage was not a manifestation of weakness, but a manifestation of too much love and hope. She hoped that her sincerity could melt the ice in their hearts. This is a worthy quality, but also a fatal weakness in a toxic environment. The moment Ashley decided to swap the glasses, for me, it was not an act of cruel revenge. It was a silent cry, the last act of self-defense of a person driven into a corner. It is a symbol of awakening, the realization that it is time to stop being a victim and become the mistress of her own destiny. I particularly like the role of allies, such as her sister-in-law Sarah or the silent father-in-law Nathan. This shows that even in the darkest environment, there are always rays of kindness and decency. The question is whether we have the sobriety to notice them and the courage to seize them. Throughout the story, I wanted to emphasize precisely the transformation from an emotionally dependent wife to an independent and self-sufficient woman. Ashley earned a lot of money, but at first, it did not bring her happiness. It even became an instrument for exploitation. Only when she learned to use her financial capabilities as a weapon for self-defense did money truly gain its value. This is a valuable lesson. In my opinion, the ending of the story is not just a victory, it is liberation. Liberation from a toxic marriage, from greedy people, and most importantly, liberation from the chains with which she herself bound herself for 7 years. The forgiveness she may have given her husband in the end is not a return, but a release, so that her own soul can find peace. And this is the greatest victory. In conclusion, I believe that every woman harbors immense strength. This strength can be suppressed by everyday worries, social stereotypes, or their own silent sacrifice. But if a strong enough catalyst appears, if they realize their worth, this strength will break free, capable of burning away any injustice and illuminating the path to true happiness. If Ashley's story touched a corner of your heart, if it made you think about your own life or the lives of women around you, please do not hesitate to express your sympathy. Click the like button to send words of support to women who continue to fight every day. Share this story, as it may become a warning or a source of inspiration for someone who needs it most. And most importantly, we would love to hear your thoughts. What lesson from Ashley's story stuck with you the most, and would you have acted the same way in her place? Leave your comments below. And if you are new to our channel, subscribe and click the bell icon to join us in creating a community where meaningful stories are heard, shared, and spread.